far. I just find it so so enriching, and I just thank all of you for being here and those online being present and active in the comments. We really appreciate the energy. So this is the Business of Design Leadership panel, and this was put together with the collaboration of Design Observer and with the help of Morningstar. So I want to thank Morningstar, a key sponsor of this event. So today we have four incredible multidisciplinary design leaders who are going to share. They're going to take a few moments to share their unique background as well as some perspectives of how they've instrumented design within their organizations or in the process of evolving design within their enterprise. And they'll speak to value creation, they'll speak to inclusion, they'll speak to future foresight. And their stories will provide insight on how we reimagine ways to leverage design for strategic influence, as well as the implications for what that means for careers moving forward. One quick note, though we're talking about commerce as it relates to design leadership, I do want us to take a moment to express gratitude for the collective resistance and frontline activism that is ongoing in light of recent anti-DEI paradigms and anti-DEI legislation. So, thank you. And the last thing I'll say before I allow my friends to introduce themselves is that we should look to enterprises as platforms that can demonstrate the benefits of inclusion, what it means to thoughtfully engage community, outreach, these kind of things. And design has an incredible voice in leading this forward too. So let's put that in the back of our minds. So we'll begin with Wes. It'll take a few minutes to introduce yourself and your presentation.
Sure. I'm just gonna step over here, craning my neck to the, something happens when you hit 40. Things don't work the way they used to. Here,
Amen.
Drop this here. So I'm Wes Eugene, and the QR code is up there with a purpose. So go ahead and snag a look at that QR code. A way to stay in touch with me. But my current role is I'm SVP of North America for a company called HIT Global. HIT stands for Humanizing IT, and we're on a mission to integrate the principles and practices of human-centered design with IT service delivery. I, before then, was CIO and partner at a little company you might have heard of called IDEO. Save for the people in the back. Yeah, and so, you know, I really enjoyed my time at IDEO. Definitely got very involved with making sure that as we're moving on in our mission about the world, centering on inclusion and really amplifying the reasons why that matters in design. And you know, from projects like redesigning the LA County voting system to make it accessible for all people, make it accessible for people despite their differences, their disabilities, and different challenges, to redesigning school systems in Peru for the middle class. There's been quite a track record of work that we're very proud of, I'm very proud of, and centering on inclusion is, I think, a design principle that's not just good for business, but quite honestly, the moral, ethical, and right thing to do. Last year, and this is continuing, there's been a lot of conversation about the relationship between emerging technologies like generative AI and what it means for us to maintain our own humanity. And so we'll probably have an opportunity to get into a little bit of that. And then ultimately, again, I'm working on a mission advancing the humanization of IT through the embrace of human-centered design at HIT Global. That's all there is for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Wes. Michael?
Thanks for having me. My name is Michael Held. Okay, that's missing. I'm the Vice President of Design at Steelcase, one of the partners here at the conference. We're a large contract furniture manufacturer. I had actually one image to show you what we do. That's missing, but I'm not here to tell you much about the company and our output of the company. I want to speak a little bit about the DEI topic, I think, in our company, and how I feel that translates also into more like grassroots activities and vision setting for the design community at Steelcase. So this is our title of our latest impact report. You can download this on our website, steelcase.com, if you're interested in more of the details in that. But it's really about like the work towards a better future. We think better is possible. And I think they really have my old slides. I'm sorry for that. So this is there's gonna be a few things missing. I don't know, I have to maybe try to talk about them. This is an excerpt from that report. It's about our DEI initiatives over the last couple of years. Isabel Medellin, she's our director in the company leading that. And like many companies of our size, publicly listed companies, we have these initiatives, but the company really also invested over the last couple of years in quite a few positions and people that help us drive this topic and help to teach us as well in the company. So 2.5 years ago, we didn't really have much of this. Today we have like 8 business inclusion groups, and we're making progress, but we're far from perfect, of course. So there's a lot of transparency in the report about data behind that, and whoever's interested, I would encourage you to kind of read that. There's inclusive employment practices of how we try to attract talent and hire people, retain talent, and create belonging in the company. So one of the things that actually was supposed to be here is the 8th business inclusion group. It's missing 2 slides of this. The name of that is Be Big. It's the Black Experience Business Inclusion Group. That's the latest addition to all of those groups in the company. And their purpose statement, which I'm sorry, I do not know by heart, so I can't tell you the whole statement at the moment, but they're really bringing that particular experience and voice to the table. There are also grassroots, I would say, initiatives like we have in our product development team, and that's where the design team is very active in, a DEI practice. We have 2 engineers, 2 black engineers that didn't feel that the workplace really reflected them in the right way. They wanted to be seen and heard in the way they felt they wanted to be seen and heard. And they came, you know, through their research and dialogue with many other people at the company across the work of Fiesta Gates in Chicago, got inspired by that and kind of started to talk to the company about creating like some piece of art that really symbolizes this kind of element in the company, and found a local artist in Grand Rapids to help us, and I'm not going to try to pronounce the artwork's name. It's an Indian language that, you know, I can't really pronounce, and it's an artwork about like coming together in a place, and they really did a phenomenal job working with the company, working with many people in the company to make that possible. And a few weeks ago, we actually had the artist and his team at the company installing this at the entrance of our campus. When it comes to design, there's my leadership team came together last year to kind of talk a little bit about like the next 3 to 5 years. What's our mission in the company, and what is our vision for design at Steelcase? And we really want to bring diverse voices together to make abstract ideas tangible. I think that's one of the superpowers of design. A lot of people in business contexts talk. I think design can really take those ideas and give them shape and form and a voice in these contexts. And we want to enable to develop solutions that will positively impact the business and our planet. And there's 4 key elements that we want to focus on for designing for better outcomes. There's designing around experiences, for experiences, designing with and for technology, designing with and for inclusion, and designing for circularity. And the inclusion element for us, I think, has several layers to this. I think the design process can often be a little bit exclusive. Early on, ideas are fragile. They need to be protected. You can't expose them to everyone, as probably most designers know. But you want to still include other people, and as you go along, you want to open that forum to more and more people. And so how do you do that in a way where often behind the scenes there's the need for IP protection? That's all from me. Thanks.
Thanks, Michael. Saul?
Hi, everyone. Really glad to be here. I'm Saul Sender. I'm the head of brand strategy at Morningstar. And I don't know how Star is, but here we are. Our logo is up here and on our sponsorship. The design at Morningstar was very important from the beginning. Our CEO, when he founded the company, sought out the most famous logo designer in one of the most famous logo designers in the world, Paul Rand, and invested in design from the very beginning. See if I get this clicker right. It has so many interesting buttons on them. You can't see it very well, but Morningstar is, from the very beginning, has been about helping investors understand investing better and what was underneath what had previously been very opaque investment vehicles like mutual funds. In the beginning, people didn't understand them. People didn't understand what was in them. People didn't understand what they were paying for when it came to people who were managing their money. And Morningstar used design and, of course, research to lift the veil on that. And the research is really core to that. Research in stocks, research about mutual funds. Design goes hand in hand with it and always has. And the intellectual property that we've developed around the medalists that we give to mutual funds, the stars to stocks, all helps investors understand what they might want to invest in and why. And at this conference, you know, the way I think about that, and to think about, I think, Morningstar within the context of design writ large and investing, is that implicit to our mission of empowering investor success is also democratizing investing, and that design should be a vehicle that makes investing accessible to as many people as possible. And obviously, we believe in investing. We believe investing can help people realize the kinds of lives that they want to realize and develop long-term wealth for themselves. We know there are problems about wealth gaps in this country that emanate from long practices around redlining and other deeply troubling things. But we believe investing is a way for everyone to get there. And so we use design and how we explain the value of various kinds of strategies. Difficult to see on the screen there, but hopefully you can get a little sense of how design functions for us. All the way down to, you know, when we find a mutual fund that we think is especially strong investment that people might want to look at, we give them awards. And this is this hand-blown glass award that was designed by our design team. So again, design flows through Morningstar top to bottom. You can see some of our more recent digital efforts on that front. Looking forward to having a conversation with this panel about design. Since I have another minute or so, what I don't have up here is we are a very progressive employer. So we have employee groups within Morningstar. I wish I had a slide that expressed all of them, but All sorts of different groups have come together within Morningstar and have a voice to develop community and perspectives, not just around investing, but the way they go about bringing value to workplace at Morningstar and to the communities in which we operate. Thank you.
Thank you, Saul. Brian.
Last but not least, good afternoon. Thank you. So I'm Brian Rice. I head design for 3M. I thought I would do a couple things. Maybe just tell you a little bit about me, a little bit about 3M, and we'll save most of the design discussion for the panel. Much like many of you or some in the audience, I started my journey in design at a historically black college as well, Florida A&M University, and went straight into the corporate game. I thought I was going to do the agency thing, but went right into corporate. So you'll notice up there P&G twice, Georgia Pacific, where I was head of design, spent a little time at Coca-Cola leading design for their youth and teen brands, and then found my way during the pandemic at 3M, where I'm the Senior Vice President, Chief Brand Design Officer across the enterprise. I thought I would tell you a little bit more about 3M, because usually when people hear 3M, it's like, oh, they make what, Post-it notes? Yeah, well, it's a little more than that. We do make that. Over 100 years old, a global footprint of about 85,000 employees globally across over 80 countries. A lot of B's up there because it is a big company. Our smallest division is actually the one you probably know the most about: Post-it notes, Scotch tape, Filtrete, things like that. But we have an enormous safety and industrial business, transportation, electronics. We're actually about to spin off our healthcare business. It'll be its own Fortune 500 company in about 2 weeks, so April 1st. It'll spin off to a new company called Solventum. And so I'm telling you all of this because you'll get a taste of like the complexity, over 60,000 products that my organization and many organizations around the company are responsible for. So we're a little bit more than Post-it notes, and big and complex. And so thank goodness I got a team that will help me kind of get through all of it. A little bit about 3M Design, and I'll be very brief. 38,000 square feet. The design studio, the biggest design studio, is actually in St. Paul, Minnesota. We like to call it a designer's playground because designers need to be in a space that is about them, much like our R&D leaders with labs. And so this is our version of our lab. And so it's a great space. Come see me. And then around the world, Italy, China, Japan. We have a studio in India, again, where designers do what we do. And across a variety of disciplines, all the way from design research, usability testing, trend research, and then the classic industrial design, product design, graphic design, all of those things that we do. And so you can't read this, but I'll just, what I love about this particular topic, and I know that we'll get into it, is actually bullet point number 2. It's a little blurry, but we talk about business is design, but design is actually business. And call me a little biased because I started out in the space, but I got to tell you the number of conversations and what I learned very early on is that that it is critical to business success, right? It is. It's not a matter of having a conversation. Do we fit in? Where do we fit in? Having a seat at the table. I always say we design the table, the seat, the room, all of that. And so we definitely have a role to play. And so I'm hoping to get into this great conversation with other business leaders or design leaders as well this afternoon. So thank you.
Thank you, Brian. So, wonderful backgrounds and convictions that your enterprises are championing. Saul, let's start with you. Morningstar, and for just some context, Morningstar was a wonderful sponsor to season 10 of Design Observer's Design of Business, Business of Design podcast. And you can learn more about Morningstar through enjoying the season 10 episodes. We had the CEO of Morningstar on one of the episodes, so great. And we felt the belief in design. We felt design at its core, at its roots. And with roots emanating from Chicago, that corridor, and you speak of empowering investor success and democratizing investing more broadly, you're now spanning the world. And I guess I'm curious, how has leveraging design helped maintain the overarching brand promise across all the different touch points, media properties, and services that you provide? How do you maintain, or maybe more appropriate, evolve the brand promise?
Well, we express ourselves as kind of a media property globally. So if you go to Morningstar.com or to any of the other websites with the country URLs at the end there, it will be a research site and sort of putting forth research perspective for investors. I'd like us to be more aggressive on that front in terms of championing the investor internationally. I mean, investing is relatively mature in the United States, right? I mean, the investor archetype, whoever you think that is, maybe Warren Buffett, and Warren Buffett is an inspiration for Morningstar, how he goes about investing. But, we know it's not as mature as it should be in the United States. It's not as democratized as it should be for a lot of different reasons. And I think, as we look at our journey on DEI fronts, but also our community engagement strategies, I think that's going to, hopefully develop more substantially in the coming years with our new DEI leader. Internationally, it's really not mature to be an investor in many countries in the world. And I'd like, as we look at the reputation of the brand and how we want the brand to be perceived internationally, I'd like to think that Morningstar could be seen as the champion for investors around the world. That's a tricky stance to, take when a lot of the limitations have to do with government policy and, whether a place is a true democracy, that kind of stuff. So, and you asked me about design. I think, we're probably more at a point where we have to ask some of those more fundamental questions about, do we want to be, what kind of lobbying presence do we really want to have internationally to be able to become more powerful in that regard? But it would always involve design, explaining to investors how they can go about thinking about finding a strategy for themselves that makes sense for their goals, and that they're not, that they're getting a fair shake, and as an individual investor.
I guess as a follow-up, were there any surprises in the mission, vision, values of your brand strategy as you spread around the world to these different markets?
Well, I think the kind of things that Morningstar runs into is there's a famous, relatively recent story in India where we sort of shine a light on the fees that asset managers will charge investors, and sometimes they're clear and sometimes they're not clear. We shine a light on that, and asset managers don't like it. And there are our customers. It's an interesting dynamic for Morningstar. Our mission is oriented towards the end investor. Our customers are the asset managers and the advisors. So now, when the asset managers and the advisors aren't happy with us because we're shining a light on things that they don't want us to shine a light on, that's often been those have been the most, challenging but most compelling moments for Morningstar in its history, I think.
Any follow-ups from the others on this thread of conversation? We can move on to the next. All right, Brian. As you said, 3M manufactures a broad range of products, from building materials, adhesives, to medical supplies. But in this economic climate where design value is being questioned, many companies tend to follow perhaps the Wall Street party line of, in an uncertain economy, headwinds, let's cut back. What's non-essential? And design, unfortunately, falls victim disproportionately, perhaps in some cases, where we've seen disproportionate layoffs, or some of the most celebrated studios being disrupted. Can you speak to how you're navigating?
Yeah, well, I tell you, it's. I think many companies are dealing with the same situation. You know, I've learned a couple of things doing this a little bit. You know, one is to really kind of find your true advocates in the organization, right? I think, you know, having folks that candidly are not in design to advocate for design often is kind of one of your best secret weapons. And it took me a minute to realize that it had to be me or had to be our team that, you know, like holds the design banner, but quite frankly, leveraging the commitment that exists within the organization, one person at a time, one team at a time, one organization at a time, versus trying to hit the home run. And I think too often, sometimes we try to hit the home run. You just need to get somebody on base, because if you don't get anybody on base, you can't score, right? And so I think, you know, as we've kind of thought about, like, how do we help the organization, you know, in a strange kind of way, see what they're saying, right? And how design can show up as enabling, right, or supporting, even simplifying the complex. You know, like, how does what's the role that we play in helping simplify something that, in our case, is highly technical at times, very scientific. I mean, I deal with the R&D types all the time, and, you know, I'm just like, okay, run that back by me again, you know. And so how can we explain things in a very simple way to help those that are not scientists, right, appreciate what we do. So the threat is real, but I think finding those advocates within the organization that helps kind of talk about the value, because sometimes they hear it a little differently, I think is critically important.
And maybe a follow-up for those
Sure.
unfamiliar with the way design is structured within 3M. I gotta imagine there's a lot of intention to how you're evolving the design organization.
Sure, yeah. You know, the company is, you know, you saw the numbers in terms of just the size of it. Our group is relatively small in comparison to the other functions. I mean, we're about 150 design, you know, kind of leaders in various aspects. And so each of those, and we talked a little bit about this, each of my teams, you know, kind of report up through the business groups. And so they have skin in the game, right? They're paying for the support, the effort, and all of those kinds of things, which helps embed design into the business, as opposed to being that, you know, exclusive group over there with limited access, blah, blah, you know, all of those things that, the stereotypes, right? And so it's like, no. These are business leaders who just so happen to have a craft, right? And this craft is different than the craft that a finance person might have or your HR leader. They're all equal, right? And this is the craft, but going into it knowing that at the end of the day, it's about, like, you know, like, it's a for-profit business, right? In our case. And so being able to have those kinds of conversations by having designers embedded in the business, they're part of the teams, they have a role to play, they don't always speak up when there's just a design topic. Can they talk when there's a customer issue, right? It's all those things when you're at the table, right? Can you speak when there's a process issue, right? And I think too often we just wait for we're sitting back waiting on the design topic to come up, and it's like, wow, you just missed your opportunity to help out in that other situation.
Oh, I love that so much. When we only speak about design things, it can sound theoretical when others are so concerned about moving the business forward. So,
no, and I had it on my two. I didn't, you know, my 2 cents is kind of what was meant, is that, but we can't forget the craft, right? We're some of the best storytellers, right? We know how to collaborate and connect the dots in unique ways. So I'm not selling out on it. What I'm saying, it's an and, right? It's the design and the business, right? It's the business and design. It's both.
Love it. So Michael, Steelcase specializes in the world of work, ensuring people are empowered to use your innovative furnishings and services and solutions. I gotta believe, as you described, like canvassing the globe with all the different diverse tapestries of folks that you're designing for, designing with. How are you leveraging design to really shape that inclusion agenda? How is design's leadership voice coming through in that?
Yeah, I think in the business we do, there can be a quite tricky question. On the one hand, our business is very much not an end consumer business. So we're in the contract furniture business, so our customers are large organizations, and architects and designers use our products as ingredients with many other products to create these solutions. So there's a limit to how much influence we have over, the actual final product and or the actual final experience out there. And I think on the one hand, and I loved yesterday, I think Ritesh made this comment about this kind of like user-centered design and this empathy thing. And I don't want to disagree with that, but of course there is, I think, something very human-focused in the design process, and that has been strong at Steelcase for a long time. Wes and I we just talked about like the connection with IDEO over the decades. I think today for us, as I said in my opening statement, I think the challenge there is really like, who are the people that we can bring into this process? We do more and more kind of co-design processes with customers directly, but I loved exactly the way you phrased it, and the question is, it's really this designing with versus designing for kind of shift in terms of mindset, and this is not something that will happen overnight. Design is not doing this alone. We have, my guy who hired me always said, like, product development is a full contact sport. It's kind of, you have a lot of different functions, you have a lot of different people involved in it, and how can we as a design function be an advocate for changes or for an evolution in that process, and just like reminding everybody. And I think yesterday in one of the workshops, I loved how this was phrased, and did we consider everybody or did we consider everything? And I think just asking those questions and putting it out there, I feel, is the most important first step, and I think it's a journey.
I guess with the journey, are there any stories where you encountered maybe friction in that business-to-business set of relationships as you're trying to advocate for certain values in terms of how your solutions show up in the mix of a broader solution or broader experience?
Yeah, and not only us advocating, we also get challenged. There's large organizations out there that have very strong, I would say, they develop very strong point of views of how they want to include everybody. Right, so for example, like over the last 10, 20 years, there's been a lot of like focus around like height adjustable workstations, for example, right? So it's a very ergonomic thing to do, not sit the whole day. Sitting is the new smoking was a slogan a few years ago, and so you should stand up once in a while. But there are some people that simply cannot stand up, right? And so some organizations have decided to, I think, eliminate standing height options within the office, so to avoid those kind of situations. Others kind of like are okay with the kind of diversity. I think what we experiencing is really this. There's not one right solution, I would say. There's not one golden rule that has been established and we can just follow. It's like, I think every organization doing its own work, and having that dialogue internally and evolving.
Great. The Wes. HIT Global, on a mission to disrupt IT by really integrating the principles of human-centered design. Your organization was just founded recently, and I guess, how is it going? And maybe can you speak more about your transition from IDEO to this new organization, and do you feel like you're getting to do the things that you wanted to do, and what drives your convictions forward?
Yeah, thanks for that. Yes, you're right. HIT was recently founded, and it's a very interesting amalgamation of partners because it was the founders, Kat McDermott, who is ITIL expert and also a designer. And it's interesting because when she went on this journey and she found design and fell in love with design, she looked back at the IT industry she served for so many years and said, oh my God, this is what's been missing. IT's been missing this, right? And she partnered with Mark Basham, who's a former CEO of Axel, a training organization, and ultimately they drafted me. The way this happened is as I was working at IDEO, I was myself leading IDEO's digital transformation, but taking a design lens to it. So I insisted that our digital transformation not be anchored on products, services, or new technical capabilities, but instead be anchored on experiences. And identified 3 core experiences for us to anchor our transformation around: our employee experience, our client experiences, and then ultimately, of course, our delivery experiences. So the persona there is the persona of the team. And so in doing that work and speaking about it, I met Kat in different technology circles. We ended up actually doing a couple of conferences together where we co-presented, co-facilitated, and the energy was palpable. IT is hungry for human-centered design, and I would say, thank goodness they are, because don't we all want human-centered IT services? And don't we have experiences where we've had, there's a reason why Dilbert as a cartoon is so popular, right? He's an avatar for the deaf ear we often get when we're experiencing the delivery, we're receiving the delivery of IT services that are not human-centered at all. And so that's a little bit about that.
I love your description of the focus on experience and using technologies as enablers. I guess it seems like every company, though, has this pressure to have an answer for generative AI or other newly emerging paradigms like it. I mean, a couple years ago, call it Web 3.0, and how that continues to persist. How do you handle these conversations, and how do you stay true to your convictions?
Yeah, no, that's another excellent question. So really the way we think about it is this. First things first, I want to give just due to these emerging technologies, okay? Generative AI is a game changer. Don't ignore it. It's not a passing fad. It is important that you engage with it. But at the same time, I would say, let's not engage in the fear-mongering about these technologies. People talk about generative AI like it's going to eradicate so many jobs. And the way I like to think about it, I often say this from an IT perspective, but I'll say this as well from a design perspective. Designers are not going to be replaced by generative AI. What's going to happen is that designers who don't engage with generative AI will be replaced by designers who not only engage with generative AI, but who are really passionate about the human experience. And it's those 3 things. Absolutely. It's those 3 things that are really critical. And so with that, I would just say that, yes, these technologies are a game changer, but I believe what is perennial, what lasts forever, really truly are our human experiences. You know, when we think about the human need to clothe ourselves, that's an evergreen experience of figuring out, what am I going to wear today? And it was different for our grandparents, it's different for us, it'll be different for the next generation, but these technologies just provide us ways to enable the same persistent experiences in evolutionary and innovative ways. So I can bridge the brick and mortar with the digital world and have brand new experiences that I'm sure 3M is experimenting with, I'm sure Morningstar experimenting with, and I know Steelcase has done plenty of work with as well. So these technologies, the promise is that they enable us to enrich the human experiences we've always had and we always will.
Love it. Double down on our humanity, right? I think we sometimes forget that we're multisensorial beings that have to navigate a very physical world, and we need holistic ways to address experience.
100%.
So maybe a general question that I have for the entire panel, we can riff on it, and then we'll open it up we'll have time for 2 questions from the audience. But if design creates the future, and we've heard in other presentations, design creates culture, design equals business. I also believe that design is in the business of facilitating change. And I guess, can you each speak to maybe your leadership principles around leveraging design's voice for change and how you personally sort of manage that within your organizations? Whoever would like to go first.
I'll take a swing at it. You know, I think for us at 3M, the notion of design for accessibility or design for inclusiveness, and I think someone spoke about that earlier today, are definitely the spaces where we've been able to leverage it, right? And I say very simple things, but you know, I think about some of the products that we're developing, and just asking that question of like, well, how could someone do this one-handed, or how could we make this easier to dispose or easier to use? Like just that simple question, and then very quickly prototyping it, right? And so going from just that what if to like, oh wow, everyone could benefit from this. And so certainly we are helping to educate by showing, back to that, you know, don't just tell them, show them. Is a powerful way to do it. And so that's kind of why I mentioned earlier, like we can't forget the craft, because the craft piece is actually what we are capable of doing and helping the organization to see what's possible. And I think on a very surface, maybe somewhat surface level, I mean, I think that's kind of what we've been trying to do, is to, you know, to ask those what if questions and to show it.
Maybe we'll speak to something that you know, we've struggled with at Morningstar. I don't know how many of you are familiar with ESG as a sort of investing. It has a relationship to DEI, though that's sort of the S part of ESG, social. There's environment is the E part, and then governance is some more sort of corporate governance principles. There's been a huge backlash in the United States against it that's sort of related to right-wing backlash against DEI, undoubtedly, like there's sort of sibling backlashes. We, you know, the design team got called in to try to sort of crack the nut on how to look at climate, how to look at impact as investing principles that would, you know, sort of evolve the practice of investing by integrating those considerations alongside more traditional investing considerations like, you know, corporate margins and, you know, everything that investors have traditionally looked at. And I don't, you know, I would say design maybe got called in a little too late. I would say that people didn't see design as an opportunity to help think through the actual sort of fundamental tenets of the ratings and the componentry of the ratings and how the data needed to be structured. And, you know, so I think, I'm not sure we totally got that right. I think when I think about how investing could change and the role that design could play, I think, you know, ESG and the future of that would be an interesting area to lean into.
Yeah, I think I love, you know, when Brian was talking about the prototyping aspect, and I think it's really the superpower that design has to make things tangible, to maybe think about these preferable futures. And I think it's really important in a moment like this to focus on this, to really look forward in an optimistic way and not get kind of like drawn into these many negative discussions. I heard a lot of really good discussions here. I mean, it's an amazing energy, this conference, I have to say, about, you know, looking also at joy and looking at the bright side of things. And I feel this is what design can really spearhead in organizations and figure out kind of like what is it that we should kind of like strive for. It could be an object, it could be storytelling, I think. And the most challenging view, I think, as a design leader today in an organization is to provide clarity to the team and ensure that everybody has an opportunity to appreciate that there's a long view in this. Right, so when you do this long enough, I'm now in my, you know, I'm around 25 years doing this. Things go up, things go down, and especially in corporate businesses, sometimes these reactions are extreme, right? So people lose their job, people get jobs. You know, Europe during the pandemic tried to preserve employment with a lot of government funds. In the US, it was very easy to let people go. The US economy recovered faster and better than the European economy. So I'm not advocating for one or the other. This is not a political statement. I'm just saying, you know, there's not always, it's not always bad. It feels terrible in the moment. And I think it's the most important is just to be there for the team and help people through that, especially the generation that goes through this for the first time.
Wes, final thoughts?
Sure. I'll just start off by saying there has never been a more important role for design to play in our history. We've talked a little bit about the pressures on DE&I, the pressures against ESG and things of that nature. And even speaking beyond a technology paradigm, my fervent belief is that design gives us a way, it's going to sound a little controversial, but to operationalize love in an organization. It gives us a tool so that we could actually express our highest moral and ethical values within products, services, capabilities, and systems. And so my call would be stay in the fight, rededicate yourself to this business, to this discipline of design, and let's make the world truly a reflection of what we really believe it can be.
Yeah, one thing I was just going to add to that, just something that struck me here today is to ponder is that exclusion is a problem within corporations like writ large. Not just racial exclusion, not just gender exclusion, but just exclusion. And, you know, often it forms around silos with business units. They can't work together, people can't work together, people can't innovate. You know, and I think you're right. I think, you know, design as a facilitating function, design as something that in which we embed our highest ideals, you know, it has the potential to break through exclusion in some very unique ways.
Indeed. Well, I have to apologize. We are short of time. We have to give some time back to the agenda. So they're not going anywhere. Stick around for the conference. Follow up with them. Ask more questions. Hopefully you can engage tonight at the reception tonight. But first and foremost, I want to thank every individual on this stage. It's been an honor and a privilege just exchanging with you and understanding the convictions that drive you and your organization. So thank you.